Welcome to Pioneer Mindset, a place where we challenge our mindset and address the discomfort in both business and life by finding clarity resulting in bold conviction. I'm your host, Garrett Ruskamp, fifth generation farmer, husband, and father from rural Nebraska. Whether you're navigating frustration from past decisions or worry about the uncertainty you face today in your business, we're going to learn from our struggles and take on new challenges with a resilient mindset. Join me as I share my journey of struggles I've faced in agriculture as a farmer and family man. I'm ready to dive into honest conversations to tackle the mindsets surrounding key issues that rural ag business owners face that will ultimately help you gain control, leading to a profitable and sustainable business. Let's adapt to Pioneer Mindset and get to it.
Welcome back, everyone, to this week's episode of Pioneer Mindset. Dang, that pickup just needs another set of tires? I just put a set of tires on the truck. Just got done bringing the sprayer back to the shop. Wife wants to go on vacation. She wants a new table. And then all of a sudden, we got another 5 Target boxes that showed up. And this, that, and the other thing seem like they add up so fast, and they always compound, and they always come at the same time. And so all these little things seem to just beat us up over and over again. Maybe they're just little pokes or prods. Maybe they're punches to the jaw. Maybe they're right hooks, left hooks into the gut. Either way, it's all these little things that can really compound, that really beat us up, that really feel like we get beat down, right? And then especially when they all compound, all these thoughts that start to kind of spiraling in your head get you sucked into that negative spiral and really trapped into that scarcity mindset. All right, so for this week's episode, we're going to be talking about that scarcity mindset and kind of diving a little bit deeper into that like we do with everything else. And, with the scarcity mindset, the big thing here as I was thinking about this is, how can we go from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset? With the scarcity mindset, I got to be real. I've been there at the same thought, those thoughts that I just rattled off. Pickup needs new tires. We just replaced the truck tires, just took the sprayer in. Target boxes that showed up. Yeah, those are all pretty real for us. And so those are all things that have sent me into a spiral too, because we all have a version of scarcity and those little things that may affect us, may not. But at the end of the day, those are what kind of cause us to get into that spiral, into that scarcity spiral. Once I'm in that spiral, the thing that comes down to me, is when it comes to that scarcity versus abundance, realizing that the scarcity mindset is just not going to serve me, ultimately not going to get me where I want to go. And the abundance mindset will. So how can we kind of transition from that? And so focusing on scarcity first, because that's, got to deal with the here and now of whatever you're dealing with, right? And so the things about scarcity is that we don't realize how much it actually steals from us, specifically peace and progress. Stealing peace and progress is 100% accurate because when we're stuck in that scarcity mindset, when I'm stuck in that mindset and I'm just kind of focusing on all the negative things, I'm definitely not at peace because I've got a lot of anxiety, focusing on how I'm going to move forward. How am I going to pay back these tires that cost us so much money these days? I'm definitely not in peace because I'm just always anxious and always concerned about the future and facing the uncertainties that we always have, right? And so I'd say scarcity is definitely going to steal that peace because you're just in a constant state of worry, really. And then even progress. Progress is one of those things where when we have a scarcity mindset, when we feel like we're just not where we should be, we feel like others are further ahead, we're just not enough. Obviously, progress is something that we're going to have a hard time seeing. We're going to have a hard time realizing how much progress we've actually made. So that scarcity mindset is definitely stealing the progress that we have made thus far. Therefore, definitely not serving us because it gets us stuck into never going to be enough. All right. And so when it comes to scarcity mindset and the scarcity itself, let's take a step back and we talk about scarcity. What is it? Okay. And for you, I think about this for you. I'm going to tell you kind of the definition in the dictionary here in a second. But what is scarcity for you? So for me, scarcity is like I just rattled off before. All those little things that pop up that feel like I'm going to have a hard time. They just add up all at once. And I'm going to have a hard time paying these back. Or maybe scarcity is when the markets take a dip. Usually scarcity and uncertainty kind of live hand in hand and kind of coexist with each other. But scarcity is one of those things that just sets you into a pretty negative spiral loop to feeling stuck as to where you are at, never going to be where you want to be, never going to have enough, never going to be able to get to where you want to go. And just such a negative loop that's so extremely powerful, by the way. We don't give enough weight to how much power and how much heaviness actually comes with a scarcity mindset. And really breaking down scarcity is it's things that are scarce, hard to come by. Well, maybe it's the financial side of things. Maybe it's money. Maybe it's other things that are hard to come by. Maybe it's wealth. Maybe it's success. Maybe it's just things that are, once again, hard to come by. And so that's what kind of goes through my mind when it comes to scarcity. So now going back to the definition, and this is what I thought was pretty accurate too, is the scarcity basically is the belief that there's never enough. Okay. Just mentioned that before, never enough time, money, progress, or results. And with that mindset, everything feels urgent and heavy. Oh, urgent and heavy. Man, just even thinking about heavy just makes it even come to light more, right? And so, yeah, when you're in that scarcity mindset, everything feels urgent. All those Target boxes feel urgent. The wife wanting to go on vacation feels urgent. The pickup tires feel urgent. The sprayer feels urgent. The truck feels urgent. Everything feels urgent here and now. We got to tackle it. We got to do this now. We got to make sure that we can get through this. How are we going to get through this? There's never enough money to do that. And all of those things that we feel in that current moment are so, so heavy. When I think of something that's heavy, I literally think of carrying, maybe one, even two 50-pound, feed bags on your shoulder. Maybe we're slinging seed instead. Maybe we're not a livestock guy. We're not carrying feed. We're carrying seed. Whatever the case is, just thinking about that weight on your shoulders and how heavy that can be. Maybe for just a few steps, it's fine. Maybe for 10, 20 feet, it's fine. But maybe for a couple hundred yards, it gets pretty damn tiring and it gets pretty damn heavy and your body starts to get sore and your mind says, I don't know if I can do this. I sure would love to kick this weight off right now. I would sure love to get rid of this so I can walk in, peace, right? Peace. And so I can maybe make more progress if I didn't have this heavy weight on me, just weighing me down or pulling me back. When we come to a scarcity mindset and all those things that pop up, the thing about mindset, guys, and this is where it gets really tricky, is a scarcity mindset comes upon within your own doing. As in, like, all these things pop up and I'm the one, my mind is what takes me to the negative spiral. These things, the truck tires, the sprayer, maybe it's the combine that is going to have this big inspection that's going in, or maybe it's the alfalfa that we had to replant that it didn't plan to, and so we got to pay for that extra seed. It's all these little things. You can choose how you react to them, and your mind can choose that as well. When they compound, and it's typically maybe when we're even a little bit vulnerable that we are the most affected by this as well. Okay, and so when it comes to that scarcity mindset, it's all about what's going on in your head. Okay, it's all about the choice of how we see things. And even furthermore, kind of diving into when it comes to like even how we're affected in different seasons. This is, I think, very important to note as well, because different seasons that we're in, we're affected differently. Maybe we're in a really good season to where all the little things, we just don't sweat them. And so we don't feel them as much. We don't carry that weight around us, like the 50-pound feed bag. We don't carry it for 150 yards or, for a half a mile, whatever it is. We just kind of shed it. We don't worry about it. And in those seasons, when we're not having to deal with all that weight, we feel more freedom. We feel more at peace. We feel more confidence in what we're doing. We feel like we're making progress. But within seasons, like seasons do, they come and go. It's like waves. You might see this as waves versus seasons, kind of the same thing. We're going to have waves of times where we're maybe up on the top of the wave and we're not dealing with all this anxiety and the scarcity and all those other challenges. Or we might be at the bottom of the wave where things feel the heaviest, feel the darkest, feel the most uncertain, and feel like we're never, ever going to be able to get out of that. That's even the never enough. That one really hit home for me as I looked up that definition, because I'm like, yeah, that is true. Because oftentimes when we're down in the bottom of that wave or when we're in that darkest season, we just feel like we're never going to be able to get out of it. That spiral takes you down so fast, like a toilet bowl, if you will, for lack of better terms, right? It just takes you down so fast into a place where it's really hard to get out of. And even, like I just mentioned before, I feel like oftentimes this comes when we are most vulnerable, when there's just a crack that opens up in your mind that you're facing a little bit of doubt and anxiety. And then or you just constantly see all these other things. They might be present even in good times, but at the end of the day, they affect you differently when you are more vulnerable, when you are at the bottom of that wave, when you are in a place of just a little bit of anxiety and a little bit of doubt, a little bit of uncertainty. Boom, that's when it's going to kind of keep hitting you and hitting you and hitting you to keep you down there. At the end of the day, to some extent, that's an evil force that kind of works against us. And we got to acknowledge that as well. Those evil forces also can be seen as a form of resistance, as a form of, when we get in that scarcity mindset, maybe it's around just doing something new, doing something hard, doing something uncomfortable. Wow, man, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I have enough time, or I don't know if I have enough money. I don't know if I've got enough strength, enough of this, that, or the other thing, and causing that, once again, that doubt. And that's what kind of breeds that scarcity and keeps you trapped into that negative mindset, keeps you trapped there and stuck there and not actually going to where you want to go and serving you. And so it always feels heaviest when we're the most vulnerable. And that's when it comes in the hardest. And also the hardest to get out of when we're the most vulnerable is when there's that crack in there. And then we just have all these other things that feel like they come in like a wrecking ball and just blow that crack open. And it's hard for us to get out of it. And I'll also say a lot of times the scarcity mindset, this negative spiral loop that we get caught up into or trapped into, also feels heaviest when we're focusing on others that might be at the top of the wave, at the top of the mountain in a completely different season. And we're focusing on them versus ourselves. That's one of those things that, when we're constantly focused on somebody else, we're definitely not going to have peace and progress. And that's exactly what scarcity steals from us, is peace and progress. When we're focused on somebody else, how can we ever be happy if we're focusing on what somebody else has and versus what we have and what they've accomplished versus what we're still stuck in? I mean, that's so heavy on your shoulders. Once again, that's like carrying all your problems on a 50-pound bag on your right hand shoulder, and your left hand shoulder you throw comparing yourself to others and always focusing on others. Yeah, you're not going to go very far. You're going to be stuck and your body's going to be wore down mentally and physically by trying to carry all that weight on your shoulders. The last thing here, when it comes to the seasons and the waves and how it ebbs and flows, it always feels heaviest in the moment that you're in, the current season that you're in, the current wave that you're in. Even if we're coming a little bit higher out of a wave and we get hit back down, it's always going to feel heaviest in that moment. And so what I mean by this is heaviest in the moment, hardest in the current season. I feel like I probably brought this up a couple other times, but regardless of what we've went through in the past, the current season that we're in is always going to be the hardest in our minds. In our minds. Scarcity mindset, the mindset that you have in the current season is always going to be the biggest factor and the biggest challenge. So, whether that's physically true, if you look back on the past and if we think, okay, is this actually the hardest season that we're currently in? Maybe it is. But there might also be some times where you went through some really rough stuff in the past, and that was a heck of a lot harder. And we tend to forget about that. It seems like we have short-term memory loss on past seasons, both good and bad, by the way. We're just always caught up in the here and now, and whatever's right in front of us, whatever's top of mind, whatever wrecking ball is blowing up at that crack that's in our head that causes us to really focus on the here and now, and the challenges at hand now, and the negativity now. I was thinking about this for my example specifically. Had a lot of scarcity kind of coming in for different reasons, this, that, or the other thing. A lot of them actually related to what I talked about at the beginning. All these little things that seem to add up. I was thinking back, okay, is this actually the hardest season? I'm feeling that scarcity heaviest now, but is this actually the hardest season that we've had to go through? No, it's not. If I look back on the past, some of the really tough times for us, for me, mentally and physically, it was back in like 2019, 2020, when we were going through all those financial hardships, when we were faced with the uncertainty, the real uncertainty of if we're going to be able to continue to farm on. What does the future of operation look like? What does the future of a fifth generation operation look like? Are we going to be able to continue to do what we love and enjoy? Am I going to have an identity change because I was identifying with being a farmer and all that stuff? So I definitely look back and that season back then was, if you want to compare this right now, that was way harder than what we're currently in, what we're currently dealing with. And we forget about that. We forget that we also made it through that season. We forget that we came out of that and we came out probably better. We forget that we did something to work ourselves through that. We kept on grinding, and here we are now. how many seasons away, how many waves away, and we made it through. We forget that, good and bad or otherwise, we kind of forget. It's funny. When we talk about having a short term memory, my dad always kind of has this funny phrase. He said, I've got a good memory. It's just short. Yeah, I'd say that's pretty accurate most times. And furthermore, we always kind of tend to remember what we want to. And usually we just never remember the hard times and even the good times. Even the good times, if you think about it right now, looking back on good times, if you had to within a couple seconds rattle off a good time that comes to mind right away, I feel like for most of us, that'd probably be pretty difficult. It is for me, anyways, because we're always focused on the now, because we're always even focused on the future, because we're focused on where I am now. It's not to where I want to be. And so just kind of stuck in that here and now mindset is also what keeps us trapped into that scarcity mindset. And so within this, talking about looking back on the past, talking about how we acknowledge the hard seasons, right? It gets me to thinking about how the patterns that we have, truthfully, and the patterns that come up for us consistently. So kind of thinking about like our thinking patterns. Generally, like I said, we don't look back on the past very often. And so it's hard for us to recognize these patterns that we've gotten in. But if you could maybe take a step back or even take a look at this from a higher level, get outside of your body to some extent, look down on your past as a timeline that happened in the past, and you can see, okay, I went into a scarcity mindset here because of these things. And that point right there, that I went into scarcity mindset, I did that. And what happened was this. And then maybe we had a bad crop and then the bad prices. And then I went to the scarcity loop and then I had a rough day at home and I took it out on my wife and kids. And you can see that pattern happen. And a lot of times we don't give enough weight to those patterns and how they've actually played out. But with patterns, if we could take a step back and actually learn from them and learn how to use them, we could probably prevent us from continually going back down at the bottom part of that wave where we're always stuck in that trap of scarcity. So if we can maybe recognize, okay, these are the things that maybe start to trigger me to some extent. These are the things that cause me uncertainty, which causes the scarcity, which causes lack of clarity, which causes me to be stuck in this pit right now where I'm currently in. Maybe if we can see and recognize that pattern a little bit more, that will allow us the ability to head off going into that pit, head off going into the bottom of that wave and being stuck there for an extended amount of time, being stuck into a place that is stealing the peace and progress that we ultimately desire. So learning to use that pattern. And even for myself, it's hard for us to do that pattern recognition and the pattern change. Okay, I recognize it, but I'm still going to just go about my ways and have all these little things affect us in a much greater way than what they really need to. Or even looking back to, okay, these things happened when I was at the top of the wave, when I was in a good mood, when I was in quote unquote an abundance mindset, in that they didn't affect me as much. They didn't send me into spiral. Why? Why is that? What changed? How come those things didn't affect me at that point? And that, whether it be the season or the wave that I was currently in, and how can we make sure that happens more often? Basically, sticking into that abundance mindset more often. Even furthermore, when it comes to that pattern, and I just kind of mentioned it earlier, is I feel like that scarcity causes us lack of clarity. And so you can really identify with wanting to have a lot of that more clarity. And when we are in a more clarity mindset, we can see these patterns. We can see when things are going to be affecting us, or we just even choose not to let them affect us in the first place because we don't worry about them as much because of that current season that we're in. Okay, so that scarcity definitely causes lack of clarity. And we have that lack of clarity, and usually lack of confidence goes wrong right side of that as well. Those two are kind of paired together. When we have lack of clarity, we have lack of confidence, we don't take action. We don't get ourselves out of that negative pattern loop. Back to the pattern recognition. It's hard for us to get ourselves out of the bottom of that wave when we're stuck in that trap, that scarcity mindset, because scarcity causes lack of clarity. Lack of clarity causes lack of confidence, and lack of confidence and clarity causes us lack of action. Action is the only thing required to get you out of that trap, get me out of that trap. And so, what can we do to basically continually take action or make sure that we are recognizing these patterns ahead of time so we don't get down into that trap where it's hard for us to take action? And the thing about this is I feel like we don't give ourselves enough credit. We don't give ourselves enough credit for one, the things that we've been through in the past, all of our challenges that we've been through that we've made it out of, by the way. If you're listening to this, if you're here, you can successfully pat yourself on the back because we've made it out of the challenges that we were in before. That doesn't mean that you're not currently dealing with some challenges, you're not currently facing some things that are really difficult, or that you won't in the future, by the way, but you are still here. If you're listening to this, good job. We don't give ourselves enough credit for the things that we've been able to do. And I don't know where this comes from. I really don't know. For me, anyways, I'd say I was probably just taught to be fairly humble in all that we've done. I usually don't acknowledge the wins. I don't give myself the credit for the things that we've been able to accomplish. And yeah, we don't necessarily need to just build up your egos so that way you become invincible to some extent. We need to make sure that we're being cognitive of reality. But at the same time, hey, you've done a lot more than we give ourselves credit for. I would say the same for me because we don't always acknowledge the wins because we're always focused on the losses, because we're only seeing the losses or seeing the things that we didn't get done. I take this back to our to-do list. On Monday mornings, what we try to do is we try to have like a team meeting. Usually it's just me and my dad. Sometimes it's even just for myself to work through this. All right. It's to help us stay organized on things that we have to do and where we need to be focusing our time and energy. But when we start that, I actually have a last week's wins and we go over everything that we got accomplished last week. And the idea of that is that we sit in the fact that we got a lot of things accomplished, or maybe we just got a few really big things accomplished. Either way, we acknowledge the things that we accomplished, the wins, right? We're not focusing on the losses. We'll get to that here in a second when we're going down this meeting, if you will. We do the wins first, we do the weekly schedule, and then we would go back to the to-do list. So the to-do list is the things that still need to be done. But ultimately focusing on the wins first is supposed to allow us the ability to say, hey, we've gotten some things accomplished. Now, I will still say, coming from myself, somebody that's very humble and just doesn't I'm always focusing on the progress, always focusing on moving forward, getting as much accomplished as we can. And when we get into that mindset, even acknowledging the wins, even running down that list, it doesn't sink in. It doesn't take away some of the things that we haven't accomplished yet. And so giving that the weight that it deserves, throwing off those 50-pound feed bags so that way you can sit in the fact that you have gotten things accomplished. You have wins. You've gotten to this point thus far. So that would be considered a win. And now within this, talking about the wins, talking about the things you've accomplished, I think my mind goes next to the metric of success. So the metric of success, because we talk about the wins and you're like, well, if I've accomplished all this, if I've gotten all these wins, how come I'm not successful? That's where we need to take a pause for a second. That's where we need to ask ourselves, what is your current metric of success? Have you sat down and you actually defined what success looks like for you? Because if we don't do that, it's always going to feel like we're falling behind. By the way, I'm guilty of this myself because success, usually for me, if we're being completely honest, success looks like something that's just always out of reach because we haven't actually sat down and defined it, because we are always striving for more, for better. And therefore, if we're always striving for more and better, we're never currently going to have enough. Therefore, we're not going to have the peace and the progress that we actually want to, feel content, right? Feel at peace, be happy, enjoy where we're currently at, because there's a reason that you are where you are. By not defining that metric of success for you, not for somebody else, for yourself, right? We're always going to feel not successful. We're always going to feel like we're not to where we want to be. So what does success look like in your eyes? Okay. And now it's a hard one. I've asked a few people that, whether it be some prospects I was on the phone with, ask our clients. That's never one that people have a good answer for because we've never sat down and thought about it, because we've never actually defined it for ourselves. And I think just having those words down on paper so you can, okay, for me, success looks like, I think if you sat down and you actually thought about what does success look like, you might come up with the fact that you're pretty close to that. Maybe success is just waking up every day and surviving the challenges. Maybe success is getting yourself out of the negative loop, out of the scarcity loop that we're talking about right now. By the way, this is where we might start to find that by defining what success looks like, by actually putting some words to this, we can start to pull ourselves out of that scarcity trap and into an abundance mindset. So, talking about how do we actually do this, breaking this cycle so that way we can focus on being more in an abundance mindset and less in that scarcity mindset where we find ourselves trapped in all the time. Okay, I want to pause here for a second on the scarcity versus abundance mindset because I feel like a lot of times when people think of being in a scarcity mindset, or maybe back to the comparing yourselves to others, I didn't mention this then, but this is where my mind goes to right now, is we feel like that maybe those that have more than we do, or maybe seem like they're just life is really going for them. You probably think that they're constantly living an abundance mindset and that they never go into a scarcity mindset. Well, that, folks, is just false. That's just not true. Because even the people with all the money in the world, those that you think are just living high in life, don't have any stress, maybe things are going good, maybe they've got a lot of good relationship issues, maybe they've got good health, maybe they've got, obviously a lot of money because that's the things that we see, the materialistic things that we see. Nice pickup. Maybe they farm a lot. Maybe they've got nice equipment. Maybe they go on vacations quite a bit. Maybe they've got a lake house, you know what I mean? Or just all these little things. You might think that, man, they just must never be in a scarcity mindset. They're probably always in abundance mindset. That would be false because every single one of us, I don't care who you are right now, deals with some version of scarcity. Some version of scarcity that causes them to feel like they're never going to have enough, and that version of scarcity is always going to be stealing peace and progress from them to some extent. To some extent. It might be very minor. It might creep in very little. It might only creep in every so often. But either way, everybody fights with a scarcity mindset at some point or another. Everybody has to deal with always trying to get back to that abundance mindset. Everybody has to deal with at some point or another the lack of clarity and confidence that comes from scarcity. And so I wanted to bring that up because we get stuck into our here and now. We get stuck into our current situation. We get stuck focusing on others. We get stuck. And thinking that others don't get in this mindset, that's just not true. And so I wanted to kind of bring that up before we get into like, hey, what can we do to break this cycle? Because being in this cycle, ultimately, like we mentioned before, does not serve us, does not serve me. So anytime that I get back into the cycle, I just want to have us a way, maybe some things to help us bring us back out of it. And so here's some things that kind of come up that we can really do is the first one, like everything else, is always just maybe taking a step back and acknowledging, shit, I am just in a really bad mood right now. I am just really facing these challenges. And that's kind of what I did here lately as I was dealing with a lot of these different thoughts is I just paused. I'm like, man, I am noticing that all these little things are bothering me. I'm noticing that I am feeling a lot of anxiety around these little things. And usually when we do that, if there's maybe other people that quote unquote are responsible for that, we start blaming them and that doesn't serve anybody. That just causes hardships and more hard feelings, right? And so just acknowledging whatever you're dealing with, whatever your mind goes to, whatever thoughts that come up, because the thoughts dictate our actions. So we got to first acknowledge those thoughts, name it, whether it be write it down on a piece of paper or just write it down on your phone. Maybe just talk into a voice memo app. Man, okay, today, Thursday, I'm dealing with this, that, and the other thing. And then just name it, acknowledge it. Now, the next one would be look back. Look back maybe to a past, in a time in the past that you dealt with something similar. I used to actually, a while back, it's been quite a while back. I used to be really good about keeping, I don't want to call it a journal necessarily, but it was literally just the things that we got accomplished or the things that we did that day. It was a big calendar, if you will. At the end of the day, I would write down, okay, we did this, 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 and this, and this. Okay, and so I was thinking about when it comes to looking back, what if we actually, instead of writing that down, maybe we just jot down some things at the end of the day. It's okay, we did this. We got the alfalfa replanted, got some new pickup tires. We changed oil on this. We sprayed this crop. But then we write those things down, which those things are really good to look back on. But what about, okay, today I struggled with this. I struggled with all these negative thoughts that came up when the wife's Amazon package showed up. And so we just write those things down, those thoughts that we had throughout that day. And maybe if there was anything that worked or didn't work to get yourself out of that. And then being able to look back on that, and that's what's going to help us create that pattern recognition. That's what's going to help us to pull us back out of that scarcity mindset a lot quicker, or at least help us so we don't stay trapped in there as much. Maybe we don't go that full deep dive when we're following that wave. We ride that top a little bit longer as much as we can, right? And so being able to look back, there's so much power in looking back on the things that we've been able to accomplish and how we've been able to get ourselves out of those negative mindsets and that scarcity mindset and that lack of clarity. And so then even I'd say after that, so that's kind of step 2 there. Step 3 would be kind of listing the things that you've actually accomplished. Maybe it's just short term, listing 3 things right now that you've actually accomplished, not what you still need to do. Don't be focused on that for 1 second. Just put a pause on what needs to be done and focus on the things that you've actually been able to accomplish. Well, maybe you say, okay, well, I was able to spray all of our soybean pills this week. Or maybe I say, well, I went ahead and I got our balance sheet updated this week. Or I went ahead and I took a Sunday off and I spent it with the family and with the kids. Just listing 3 things that you were actually able to accomplish, not focusing on the future, not focusing on the things that you haven't done yet. What have you accomplished? Okay, take 1 second. Be less humble. Build your ego up if you have to, because that's going to help you break that cycle, get you back into, because once we realize, okay, man, I have been able to accomplish things, that brings clarity and that helps you do the next thing is just do one small thing. Take action. Action kills scarcity. Action kills scarcity. Or I guess we'll take that one step back. So we talk about scarcity basically bleeds lack of clarity. Well, how do we deal with lack of clarity? We take action. By constantly taking action, you'll find one way or another, you're going to find some clarity. You're going to get rid of that scarcity. You're going to find yourself coming back out of that wave, getting back to a season where it's not as big a deal. And so even just taking something action, doing one small thing right now. What's on your to-do list? What's one thing that you can do? What's one thing that you can pull yourself out of? Maybe that one thing is literally just writing down at the end of the day the different mindsets that you have, the different challenges that you faced, and how you're able to address them. Maybe that's the one little action. And so furthermore, when it comes to these different steps here, I want to add this kind of at the end is a lot of times when it deals with scarcity and we're talking about financials, right? We're talking about money. That's where a lot of my mind goes to when it comes to scarcity is maybe the lack thereof money when we're in financial challenges or just in general. Even if you got all the money in the world, maybe your previous situations, maybe your worldview, your perspective, you're constantly focusing on making sure that we can keep that. So we're dealing with scarcity even when we don't need to. And so one thing that a guy can do there is I feel like, we talk about that scarcity causes lack of clarity. And how do we fix lack of clarity? We fix that by asking ourselves, what are the facts? Maybe it's what are the facts for our financial situation and what's actually in the bank account? What does the cash flow look like? What do the numbers say? So we can answer that. But also, what are the facts for our current situation? When we say back, I feel like I haven't gotten anything accomplished. Well, is that a fact or opinion? Can we actually factually say, I have not got anything accomplished? Well, maybe you're just sitting on the couch all day like couch potato. Maybe that's true. But maybe the facts are, well, I've actually gotten this, that, and the other thing accomplished. So that's another reason there that, looking back is not a bad thing. And making sure that we ask ourselves, what are the facts of our current situation? So that way we can use those facts to give us some clarity and give us that clarity that we need to maybe ultimately take that action. Give us enough clarity to just continue to take action. And if we continue to take action, we are ultimately going to get ourselves out of that scarcity mindset and back to the abundance mindset. So, that's what this is all about, right? Is talking about how do we keep ourselves into an abundance mindset. And so focused more on the scarcity in this episode, because that was kind of, I feel like we got to address that firsthand and got to kind of name it like we talked about before. Got to recognize that pattern. Got to figure out everything that we've done thus far. Ask ourselves, what are the facts to help get ourselves out of that? And the last thing there is also defining that metric of success. So that way you can constantly go back to that. Maybe use your metric of success as like your mission to some extent. We all want to be successful. Well, how the hell are we supposed to do that if we don't know what success actually looks like? As we kind of get to rounding this out a little bit, longer episode, apologize for that. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of things here that we can dive into. And especially at the end, just talking about which mindset's ultimately going to serve you the best. Was it scarcity or is it abundance? Scarcity is going to keep you stuck. Abundance is going to allow you to basically be at peace with the progress that you have. The last thing here is your thoughts are really going to dictate the results that you get in your life. Your thoughts dictate the results you get into your life. So if you don't like the results that you're getting, maybe we need to change the thoughts. So how can you do your best to actually kill the scarcity and live in abundance? Get yourself out of that scarcity mindset so that way peace and progress is not constantly being stolen. I hope that there was something that you could take away and use from this week's episode. If you struggle with scarcity like most of us do, like I still do all the time as well, by all means, love to hear if there's certain things that cause you to get into that scarcity mindset. Love to hear if there's anything that's really worked for you specifically, that might be able to help others. And so that would be great to hear from you as well. So, you can leave a comment, leave a review, hit me up on pioneerfarmer.org. Would love to have that conversation. If there's anything that's worked well for you, I'm always learning as well. So if there's anything that's worked for you, maybe it'll work for me, maybe it'll work for somebody else. That's all I got for this week's episode, folks, and we'll catch you guys next time.
Thanks for tagging along with me today as we sharpened our mindsets. If you've gained insight from today's episode, be sure to take a screenshot to share or send this episode to somebody who might also find value in it. For more, follow me on Instagram at Garrett Ruskamp or on Facebook, and join me next time for more conviction through clarity.